Ekaterina Gordeeva/Sergei Grinkov are the pearls of figure skating, multiple world and European champions who won Olympic gold for the USSR in 1988 and for Russia in 1994. They conquered big-time sports with their charisma, technique, and presentation, and then secured a place in the most prestigious projects of the era. A tour of dozens of cities, a move to the USA, contracts, absolute recognition. Ekaterina Gordeeva/Sergei Grinkov are also a beautiful love story that ended when his knees buckled on the rink in Lake Placid. Grinkov did not live to see 30, and Gordeeva, left with her daughter, did not lose herself thanks to figure skating. She arranged her life in the USA and Canada, wrote an autobiography, which is about them from beginning to end, Katyuka and Seryoga. Gordeeva, still as impressive and smiling, regularly visits Russia, but almost never gives long interviews. I live in Edmonton, Canada, moved here in 2020 and married Olympic champion David Pelletier. My youngest daughter Elizaveta lives with me and in California. Now everything can be done online, so she does an internship in America and studies remotely. My eldest daughter Dasha lives and works in California. She has never left. And I have a job in Edmonton. Since April 2021, when the restrictions became easier, I have a lot to do. I coach singles and pairs, from 6 to 8 years old to 17 to 18. Your Russian is excellent, without an accent at all. My English is also fine, but I will never lose Russian. I have many Russian friends. I have time to talk with my family. Of course, I still forget some words. Once, and it seems like the supply runs out. Then I start thinking in English, choosing words. But this is rare. I read books in Russian. My daughters speak without an accent, although they studied in English, and in fact, it is completely their language. In the family, we speak only Russian. We don't even switch to English. Although for many it would be normal. You just take the word that is easier to remember or pronounce. Do you visit Russia regularly? I would like to more. Before the pandemic, I came twice a year. Ilya Overbook invited me to a New Year's show, and in the summer I went to my mother's dacha. I feel completely Russian. I think that if now there was a need to move to Russia and start all over again there would be no problem. How often do you skate, perform? Less than before. I like to coach. I also like skating, but I have certain criteria for myself. The body is no longer so elastic and patient, and this must be accepted. It is one thing to skate for the soul or in a show like Overbook. Everything is not so tough there. Or during the pandemic year, I worked as a coach and director at Battle of the Blades. That's also possible. And take the Stars on Ice show, where I performed about 5 years ago. It requires very strong preparation. 2 numbers with jumps. No, I definitely can't do that anymore. But I've passed the point where it was offensive. On the contrary, I'm happy with everything. I keep fit by running, doing yoga, I exercise enough. Has coaching been a dream since youth? Actually, I started about 25 years ago, and it took me 10 years to fall in love with it. When you start coaching young, you can't fall in love because there is too much unrealized in you. You want to develop yourself, not someone else. Over the years, you understand that working as a coach also means developing yourself to some extent, but in the other direction, sharing experience correctly, preparing a student correctly. When you get older, your brain restructures itself to give back and not to develop yourself. The system that I went through as a child at CSK is very firmly embedded in me, especially in terms of behavior with children. I try to gather them in groups. In Canada and the USA, working in groups is almost not accepted, mostly one-on-one lessons, but you can still gather up to 4 participants. It seems to me that it is more interesting for them, the competitive element develops, but there is also mutual support. When you are 7 to 10 years old, you grow better in a group, you reach out to someone. You went through great and completely different specialists, Zuk, Leonovic, Zueva. From whom did you take the most? You can start with the first coach, Igor Lavrinov. I am still grateful to him that I never had a bad feeling from the classes. I can't say that we always had fun during training, but it was always positive. A good children's coach is not a commander who gives orders, but someone who gets down to the student's level and makes the class interesting, tries to show. For now, I can also show simple things, make a game out of training. At this level, this is very important. Then the children will not be afraid of training and will want to come back to them. When I train pairs, I try to get out of my head everything that Leonovic, Zook, and, of course, Zueva taught me. When I set programs for pairs, I remember how Marina Olegovna behaved. She always had a backstory to the program, and not just, let's do this element, this position, more difficult. She explained what and why we were doing. The difference is that Zueva and I performed at a high level, and the pairs that I train have not yet reached this level. But even at the junior level, they should understand what kind of music and where it comes from, what they skate, what style, then it's easier to work. Zook is a more technical coach. He had more of a system in physical training. In general, in the Soviet Union and Russia, this was very developed. Before going out on the ice, there were a lot of training sessions on the floor. A huge part of the preparation took place there. We worked on the floor for months. All the lifts and the most difficult elements were studied there, then transferred to the ice. The level of pairs in Canada and the USA lags behind ours, I think precisely because almost no one here knows how to prepare on the floor. General physical training, muscle development of girls and boys, even simple push-ups and pull-ups, all this suffers here. Either there is no time or no desire, but I see it, and this is one of the biggest mistakes of local pair skating. A quote from your book, "Only in America do coaches care about what skaters feel." Here they say, go on skating and keep your dissatisfaction to yourself. How do you work? A real coach will always find a moment when such a phrase is appropriate. At the same time, he must also feel the time and circumstances when it cannot be said. You need to be careful. You can damage the student's psyche, set them against you. In the end, they can complain about you, and you will have problems. But I would not say that a strict approach is absent here. If the athlete is on the same level of attitude and desire to win as you, then this phrase can be useful. Saying this to children who do it for fun is stupid, and there is no point. The Olympic season, and that means you were definitely reminded of your victories in Calgary and Lillehammer. Do you feel nostalgic for those times? I really appreciate the time I had, competing at the Olympics, experiencing this abnormal adrenaline, feeling your body like that, being able to do so much and getting so much pleasure from it. It's like a drug. For some time you chase it, try and no longer achieve it, and you feel bad about it. But at some point I started to respect myself, I did everything, and I have to thank my body for the opportunity. Then you have to value other things. For example, having children is a much cooler step. At least, that's how it is for me. The Olympics have gradually faded into the background. I love life, delicious food, traveling, friends, people. I look for new experiences. Now I wouldn't say that I want to go back to that time. Yes, I miss Moscow, and when I fly there, I go back to that time a little. But the goal is not nostalgia, but simply to see my family and loved ones. There are people who say, "Oh, I won't go back to Russia." Even among my friends there are such people. And that's normal. They have bad associations. I don't have a single bad association, whether I grew up well or poorly, whether there was food or not. For a while we lived on Pelmany alone, the coaches seemed mean, the training camps were hard. I don't miss that time, but I don't think it was bad either. You got the opportunity to travel abroad early. What do you remember most from your trips? I realized quite early, even before my first trips, that it was interesting to be abroad. My dad danced, so he often went away, brought something, told me a lot. That's why competitions were secondary for me. I wanted to see countries more. I didn't think about how I would skate there. It doesn't matter if you end up in Switzerland, America, or Japan, for example. At competitions in the USA, there's a room with fruits, nuts, candies, whipped cream, and you can play games. All of this had a stronger effect on me than the chance to skate well. I would come to the rink, and there would be chocolate bars that I had never seen in my life. And they would just lie there. You could take as many as you wanted. Every day I would take one of these bars to bring to my sister later. I would take shampoos from hotels, save up my daily allowance. I didn't go to restaurants. I didn't buy anything extra. Why? So that at the end of the competition I could buy myself and my sister the same jeans. And Japan. Another world, other smells. At first, I really didn't like the green tea in the hotel, but then, as an association, it would put me in an interesting state. You go into your room, there's a sweater, a pencil case with pens, Coca-Cola, and a Walkman player for you. Well, anyway. And what difference does it make what place you take? You wrote that you won the first Olympics, Calgary. 88 for the Soviet Union. How's that? I was 16, and all the competitions I had gone through before couldn't compare to that preparation. In June, at the very first training camp, they hung a poster on our wall, "So many days until the Olympics." And I thought, oh, it started. And that's it. Since June, we've only been talking about this. The preparation is more serious and thorough than ever. There are many more people around than before, a million health checks, blood tests, what we eat. More meetings, moral speeches, instructions on who you can communicate with and who you can't. In the fall of '87, I got a concussion during training and spent 10 days in the hospital. I was very worried, but in fact, those 10 days were a rest for me. And when the Olympics came, I wanted only one thing, to sit at home with my mother and just drink tea, eat ice cream. I didn't want any Olympics anymore, damn it. Returning to the question, what does victory mean for the Soviet Union? All this was terribly stressful. I had never experienced anything like this before. But I thought that I had to endure it, because I am an athlete of the Soviet Union. I must repay the country for the investment in me. Now, when I see a 15 to 16-year-old athlete, I remind myself, she is, first of all, a child, and I was the same. Does it turn out that I remember Stanislav Zuk with warmth? My attitude towards him changes over time. Now I understand many things differently, what happened to him, why he behaved like that with girls, with guys. I saw that he did bad things. He was rude, did not trust students, watched what time adult girls came to the rooms. But my parents said that he was a strong coach and I had to listen to him, and so I did, sometimes against my will. There was nothing terrible from his side towards me. I didn't even hear insults. There was only strictness, and I often saw that he came home drunk. Then he disappeared, went on a drinking binge. He didn't offend you, but what about Sergei? He didn't treat Sergei very well and sometimes spoke badly to him. That's when I felt hurt. Sergei warned me, if he behaved like that, I didn't want to come to training anymore. Sergei was older than me. He understood a little more and didn't want to put up with it. I had to take someone's side, and that was Sergei's side. Are Zook's training torture? He is talented and selfish. He was not afraid of anyone, did not take anyone into account. You could feel it in his work. He was probably an unhealthy person, but a strong methodologist. Many coaches still use his system. Once, at a summer training camp, he made me jump into the water from a 12-meter platform. He said that training for the whole group would not begin until I jumped. And I couldn't even get off the platform. They lifted me up there and removed the ladder. As a result, 10 people were waiting for me to jump. What could I do? A small detail, but indicative. This is how Zook trained everyone. He also loved underwater hunting and diving in cold water. Apparently, he considered this also training. He personally did not give me a harpoon, but he made me dive with a mask and snorkel. Maybe he saw that I was not a very confident swimmer and tried to make me overcome this fear. Maybe he associated diving with breathing. Something like cardio, how to understand air, how to hold your breath. This is also required in rentals. Maybe he just loved the water? Be that as it may, I could not shirk. I was very obedient. I climbed into the water with a mask and snorkel, in a wool suit and wool socks so that the fins would not slip off. And so I swam. The suit dragged me down. Such stupidity. You signed a collective letter against Zook not because of these trainings, did you? I wanted to support the team, mainly Sergei, of course. Him, Zueva, who gave us a lot. I repeat, Zook did not say offensive things to me. But he offended Sergei, humiliated him, for example, by spying on him. And simply in words, you are junior in rank, do what I say. The same thing happened to other girls, to Alexander Fadiv. I could have not signed the letter, but there was no point in this fight. Zook trained well for a month, then disappeared for a month. This was not the right preparation for us. I took Sergei's side because I could not imagine that he would leave and I would have to skate with someone else. Or that he would stop skating. The same is true for Marina Zueva, who was our choreographer and whom we loved very much. We signed the letter, Zook was removed, and we were given a new coach, Stanislav Leonovic. Didn't it bother you that a year before Leonovic skated next to you and became, in fact, the boss? There was no one else to go to. Everything happened automatically. It used to be like that. You were told what to do. You did it. You could say no, but then you had no other options. Stanislav Viktorovich was just starting to coach. I liked his pair with Marina Pestova. He treated her very carefully. At that time, not all partners practiced this. There was more of a commanding attitude. You are a girl, do what you are told. But he and Marina were equal. He respected her, and this was evident even in skating. When we trained next to each other, he sometimes helped Sergei and me, showed lifts. I saw him as a partner and an older comrade. And when he became our coach, it was all somehow natural or something. Well, if we have to call Stas Stanislav Viktorovich, let's call him. Although he himself suggested Stas out of embarrassment. As a coach, he was almost at our level in communication. There was no great distance. Did Sergei accept him? During training, in technical aspects, yes. But we were a little nervous that he did not have enough experience as a coach at a high level. The closer to the competition, the more nervous he became. What to say, how to behave. And in these situations, he would get a little stupor. It's good that we were getting older, gradually understanding what to do and how to do it. Marina Zueva was always there too. We all went to the 1988 Olympics together, and for everyone she was the first, new, responsible. I wanted the coach to be the leader, but in this case we shared responsibility. Even before the Olympics, there was an incident at Euro 1987 when you were removed due to equipment problems. This is another detail about how inexperienced we all were. We had a very difficult free program compared to the year before. We even did a quadruple twist, an ultra SI element that has now practically disappeared from pair skating. It was mastered by the Chinese Sui/Hein. And in many ways this brought them gold at the 2022 Olympics. Sports, are you? And so, we skated it at the Europeans, did half of the program. We were going well. All the throws, jumps, twists. At the beginning, I saw that Cerise's pants were unbuttoned at the bottom, where the stirrup is. It pulls the pants down so that they don't ride up. But since the pants are made of stretchy material, nothing would have happened. The stirrup wouldn't have gotten under the skate, to be honest. I saw it, and he realized it at some point. Then we heard the judge start whistling. We didn't know what to do, and Cerise said, "Let's keep skating." I looked at Leonovic, but didn't understand anything. He was already walking towards the judge. The judge whistled again. The music stopped. But since Cerise and I had decided to skate to the end, we skated to the end. Everything was clean, a very good performance. Then we sat in kiss and cry, and Leonovic talked to the judges. It turned out that we had to stop, but since we didn't do it, they offered us to skate the program again in 2 pairs. We had 5 minutes to think, and Sergei said, "No, we won't skate so well again." It was all over. We went to the hotel, realizing that we were removed because we didn't listen to the judge. This again showed that Leonovic was not sure of the rules or read them incorrectly. When the judge starts whistling, you have to stop right away. And the judge has the right to stop the program if something is wrong with the costume, and the athletes will have the opportunity to fix everything and continue from the same place. Now I know this, but then I didn't know. Leonovic was very silent in such situations. He didn't say anything either towards us or against us. It was offensive. But objectively, for him it was exactly the same first time as for us. Now I remember the situation with laughter. Were you calm at the 1988 Olympics? There is a word in English, overwhelm. You have so many different emotions that you become satiated and nothing touches you anymore. I remember that we were well prepared. We knew that we were capable of skating cleanly and were almost not worried. We did not have to prove anything to anyone. The first time we came to the Olympics, well, in any case, it was already good, at least second, at least third. Even fourth, it would not have traumatized us. Both pairs of Tamara Moskvina, Selezneva Makarov, and Volova Vasilyev had quite strong programs, but they did not perform them cleanly during the season. We saw that they were screwing up elements, and we just needed to skate cleanly. So we did not put any additional worries on ourselves. When we won, then. Every athlete knows this feeling of emptiness, when you have done everything you could. There is a victory, everything is great. First there is euphoria, and then, what next? There is nothing left to prepare for. You have given it all. You have received everything. There is nothing higher. What to do? What did you decide to do? To avoid being scared, you decided to just wait. There is no longer a schedule. You don't have to train the next day, and you don't have to be nervous. It's a bit strange. I'm sure many athletes have this and they will understand me. Although after a couple of weeks or a month it passes, you want to try something new again, or develop, or prepare for other competitions. It's no coincidence that many people can't stand the World Championships after the Olympics. They either don't go there or perform poorly. It's very difficult to get ready for training again if you have just done something great. The second Olympics are a bit different. You just prove to yourself that you can do it again. By the way, that's how it was for us. First we took a break, then Dasha was born. I had time to miss sports and get hungry. A lot of changes happened in my life. I married Sergey. The approach to the second Olympics was completely different. We took responsibility for ourselves. We knew what we wanted. I remember every moment of preparation for the second Olympics. It was more conscious. What gift did you give yourself after winning in Calgary? The very next day I got a second hole in each ear. And I did either a perm or a perm, in short, something with my hair. I didn't consult with Sergey, but I asked my mother for permission. For me it was a big deal, such a girlish decision, like people getting tattoos. By the way, I wanted a tattoo, but what should I write or depict? I thought about it, and decided against it. After the Olympics, you found yourself at Gorbachev and Reagan's dinner. How did that happen? I wonder how I would prepare for such a day now. Probably for a long time. And then, oh, I have to do something again, go somewhere. Sergey didn't even go. I think it depended a little on the fact that at the end of the season we were invited to tour America. And I said that I wouldn't go because I was very tired. That is, I refused 25 shows in 25 cities. I could have earned a lot. Sergey said that I was completely crazy and didn't talk to me for 2 months. Accordingly, I was the only one who took the rap at the meeting with Gorbachev. It was Reagan and his wife's visit to Moscow. Raisa Maximovna Gorbacheva arranged interesting meetings and trips for them. They went to the ballet, to museums. And one evening there was a dinner with famous people of Moscow, the Soviet Union, actors, ballerinas, and others. They sat me so that Raisa Maximovna was on the left and Reagan was on the right through an interpreter. And there were 6 to 8 more people at the table. And before this dinner I got very sick, because after the Olympics for the first time in 10 years I went on vacation to the sea, to Sochi. My parents took me for my victory at the Olympics. The trip was for 10 days, but I rushed out especially for this dinner. Apparently, my body refused to do anything. I was shaking at dinner. A very unfortunate coincidence in timing, but otherwise, of course, it was great. We met Raisa Maximovna. She is kind and interesting. It was more difficult with Reagan. I spoke poor English then. I knew a few lines. We had to talk, introduce ourselves. A pleasant evening, bad associations only because of illness and a quarrel with Sergey. You skated a lot on American shows in the 80-90s. What was it like? Tom Collins invited selectively, whoever he wanted. Basically, it was the top 4 in each discipline, which means a lot of Russians and great company for the whole tour. Let's say the 1987 World Championship ended in Cincinnati, and from there we went to the first city of the show. Most likely, the one near Cincinnati. They gave us a booklet with a schedule, which city follows which, what time the performance is. And as for contracts and agreements, everything went through the Federation. We knew nothing about it. They only told us, come to the bus at such and such a time, and that's it. They take you, you perform. But this is the highest level of convenience. 4 Seasons hotels, Ritz-Carlton, good Marriott. We stayed right in Beverly Hills, in San Francisco. The organization was great. You didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was decided for us. The coaches always went with the team. Leonovic, Moskvina. Not always all together, but someone was definitely keeping an eye on us. Usually 4 people, coaches, someone from the Federation, someone from the KGB, so that there were no problems. At that time, figure skating was incredibly popular, 15,000 people in the stands every evening. And so 20 to 25 cities per tour. How hard is it? Not at all, it's pure joy. The season is over, and you're in peak form. You don't have to train, everything happens on its own. The body relaxes and rests a little, so we often went through these shows in a form that we weren't even in at the World Championships. Seriously, some elements turned out better. The guys did the axles just like that, without any problems, and the spotlights, darkness, and special lighting didn't get in the way. 20 to 25 cities per tour is normal. We got a little tired from traveling, but it wasn't scary. We went by bus in some places, flew by regular planes in others. We didn't have jets. It got tiresome when Tom got to 60 cities per tour. How did they pay you? They gathered us and said that Tom would pay in an envelope. The envelope had to be given to the team person from the federation, and then the federation would give us as much as they thought was necessary. I think they took about half. For us, even that was great, to earn something and see America at the same time. By the way, Tom knew that Russian skaters don't get paid that much, and that the federation takes part of the money. That's why he paid for our room service, made dinners, provided food in the room, a minibar for the guys, which they always emptied. You did not compete in the 1992 Olympics, having gone professional. Probably, not everyone understands what it means to go professional and at the same time stop competing at the World Championships and the Games. Yes, in figure skating it's the other way around. If you're a professional, it means you've already finished with the sport. If you're still in the sport, then you're an amateur. An amateur fights for awards for the country, a professional earns money for himself. A professional does not compete in tournaments, but in tours of 10 to 15 cities and in shows, of which there were many around the world at that time, the USA, Canada, Japan, including TV shows. Figure skaters have always had the opportunity to go pro after sport. It's very interesting because you no longer have to stick to technical limits, you can try anything. At the same time, the skill is still great, it didn't disappear after the sport. Figure skating is a very artistic sport, not comparable to swimming or running. There is a great opportunity to perform, develop, improve, even after you have finished competitions. And many succeed. How did you and Sergey decide to switch? It was in 1991. Sergey's shoulder was hurting more and more. We could train less and less. He didn't do lifts. He was given hydrocortisone injections, but it didn't help much. Our drive also ended. We didn't know what else to do, how to move forward. We wanted to move forward, but it seemed to us that we were stuck. And we also wanted a normal life. I was 18 to 19 years old. Sergey was 4 years older. Such a combination of factors: fatigue, end of drive, nothing to strive for, injury. Little by little, we decided. At the same time, coaches started switching. I think Gordeeva was the first to go to Canada. Then Leonovic found something in France. And we decided to go to Tarasova, who had a good professional show. Tatiana Anatolyevna suggested going there, first develop as professionals, and then we'll see. If it's okay, we'll go compete. Hooked? Yes, our development began. We learned a lot of interesting lifts, improved our artistry. We didn't have that in sports, we just didn't have enough time for it. There are only elements. On the one hand, it became more interesting. On the other hand, Sergey was still suffering with his shoulder. He had been suffering for a year. It ended with us going for surgery. After the surgery, everything was fine, but we decided to skip a year. Naturally, any such decision is difficult. It seemed that we were already finished as athletes. We wouldn't be able to return. I wanted to compete, but I also wanted to try the show as a calmer environment. Was your and Sergey's move to the USA thanks to the show and to performing in the pros? After the 1990 World Championship in Halifax, a man came up to us and asked, "Would you like to perform in a show?" We didn't really react then, we said we'd think about it. In fact, those were still the times when it wasn't even really welcome if we talked to them. But we realized that they had their eye on us. In parallel with Colin's show, another group, Stars on Ice, was developing in the USA. That's where we ended up. In 1991, IMG signed a contract with us. They usually worked with hockey players. Even the agent who talked to us told us about Russians leaving for the NHL. We were guaranteed so many shows and a certain amount for each appearance. We consulted with Gordeeva and decided, I don't remember the details. We knew that there would be enough work. We went on the Stars on Ice tour for the first time then, in 1991. I got pregnant right on the tour. I was already skating with Dasha. I performed until the 4th month. Didn't anyone on the show find it embarrassing? On the contrary. After the tour, we returned to Moscow, but the agents urged us on. You'll give birth in September, and in December you'll go on tour. For me, it looked dubious. I answered, well, we'll see. But they were persistent. They waited. They organized housing for us, a place to train, a hospital for me to give birth. This is complete interest and support, providing everything. Apparently, they saw potential in us. In September 1992, Dasha was born, and at that time in Moscow and Russia, interest in figure skating began to decline. And in sports in general. The crazy 90s began. Everyone went into business. Even good, talented athletes from CSK left. Who the hell needs the sport, especially figure skating? They opened businesses or entered someone else's business. And you could understand them. Either you are a cool athlete or you are broke. It was easier to buy and resell cars then, or open a Coca-Cola stand. Were you scared by everything that was happening in Russia? No, it more or less bypassed us. I wasn't planning on going into any business, but I saw that something was wrong. The rinks were becoming abandoned. It was upsetting. The most telling thing, people stopped bringing their children to the clubs. Take CSK, at least 100 people were brought on September 1st every year, sometimes up to 200. That year, 10 to 15 came. The contract came in very handy. In general, we were among the first athletes to sign a contract with a good company. And it kept us under its wing. How and why, after a show and going pro, return to amateurs for the Olympics? Marina Zueva once said, "Guys, you skate too well not to compete at the Olympics again." I heard that Boitano, Witt, and some other professionals want to return for the 1994 Olympics. They are writing a letter to the ISU. Zueva, so to speak, drove us away, and we also wrote. Everything was fine on the tour. We started training. Zueva, who was already living in Canada, set up programs for us. Leonovic was already in Paris at that time. He had a family. That is, he was no longer planning to return. We stayed with Zueva in Canada for 3 to 4 months, and then went to Moscow in search of a coach. We asked Tarasova, but she had already promised to support the Mishkyutnok-Dmitriev pair and told us honestly that she would not be able to break away. Vladimir Zakharov became our coach, the one who first paired us in the 80s. He had a pair group at CSK, Good Ice, and he trained us, or rather, more simply helped us, kept us in shape, monitored the equipment, was in contact with the federation. He and Sergei worked very well together. This is important. Yes, sometimes Sergei was lazy and said, maybe we won't do these training sessions anymore, but we got into the swing of things. I felt much stronger than in 1988, in emotions, in physical fitness, in spirit. Maybe the birth of a child also had an effect. Probably, if this happens early, a woman becomes stronger and more complete. The birth of Dasha gave me a lot. From your book, it seems that you became close to Sergei largely due to your concussion in 1987. Probably. Before that, it seemed to me that we had a purely working relationship, just two athletes skating together. There was still some attraction, in the sense that I enjoyed skating with him from the first day. I liked him as an adult. I was 11 to 12, he was 15 to 16. At that time, there was a huge difference. And I thought, wow, he even talks to me, even asks me things. And he is also a kind, sympathetic person. Naturally, this all grew over the years. At first, he thought like this. Some girl is nearby, you skate, well, okay, so be it. I probably also proved to him in some way that I was a person. The concussion was the first moment when I felt he was worried about me. He came to the hospital, and it was really touching. He felt guilty. He fell on the lift. Dropped me. Maybe it happened because we didn't warm up properly, didn't prepare for the training. In the hospital, I felt sorry for him. He apologized, took the blame on himself. He brought flowers. That was the first time I felt that he really saw and perceived me. What did he call you most often? Katyuka. No one else called me that. And even more so now. And I called him Seryoga, even in conversations with my parents. Others called us Katya, Seryoza, Sergei, but for everyone at the rink we were Katyuka and Seryoga. How quickly did you get over the tragedy with him? And what helped? It's impossible to get over it completely. I still come back. There are many things connected that I can't let go of. The greatest connection is through Dasha. That's why the loss never heals. That is, it will be with her all her life, and therefore with me too. Dasha was already born, but she remembers almost nothing, and that's even worse. She constantly returns to her dad and her thoughts and grows up with it. She must learn to live with it. Even though she is an adult, she is still learning. It is impossible to do it completely. There is a psychological wound. I have less, probably because I was an adult and somehow experienced it in my own way. Figure skating at that time became a pill that helped me. I bypassed depression. That is, it was in me, but figure skating distracted me. Stars on Ice hired me, Zueva also said. Let's skate. Let's do a number. You will perform. She moved me towards skating. And my parents? My parents did not push me anywhere, but supported me in any decision. They saw that skating saved me from sitting at home and delving into nostalgia and depression. If nothing distracts you, then you only tense up. There were moments when I delved so deeply that I hid from people, did not want to go out, did not want to talk to anyone. Even with support, there were times when it was too much, at one time it was excessive. Why did you agree to the book so soon after everything? It also healed me. It was my process of remembering. In English, it is called grieving. To grieve, to suffer. You have to suffer completely, cry, talk it out. The book helped with this, as if I felt everything again. You need to talk about this, but you can't do it with yourself. For such cases, people look for a psychologist, and the author of the book was like my psychologist. We met, and it was like a session interview. It lasted for about 2 months, about once a week we talked. Yes, it happened with tears, emotions, unpleasantly. I didn't like him from the start. But when he asked questions, it sounded right and useful. He did it all well. Do you still communicate with Zueva? We are in touch, although not constantly. When there is an invisible connection, you don't always need to talk. I coached one couple. They skated with me for 2 years. And then I asked Marina to watch them. They went to her. Marina worked with Virtue Moyer. I watched their free dance at the Vancouver Olympics and saw that it was practically a dedication, a reference to me and Sergey. Probably no one except Marina and me can know this, but there are many moments that we did with Sergey. Such touches that went into our last number. We never skated it. Marina used it for Tessa and Scott. I always liked them. Maybe for Marina they were a little bit of who we once were.